Greetings, amigops, and top teners everywhere. This is Mike from Top 10 with Kyle and Mike. I am joined this week, as I am every week, by our lovely, it looks like kind of purple, maybe Merlot hoodied. I might be getting his outfit totally wrong, co-host Kyle. Kyle and I are blessed, graced, delighted to be joined by our lovely partners in crime, Allegis, wife of the pod, with the bumpin' long red hair going this week, and fiancé of the pod, Caroline, with the horizontal, also kind of purpley, Merlot-y top going on here. The four of us are going to discuss a topic. I think we kind of know what it might be, but I'm not sure exactly what it's going to be. Allegis and Kyle will let us know. We're going to discuss that topic over the course of this episode, debate it vigorously, rank it, re-rank it. By the end of this episode, we will have a definitive top 10 list. So guys, what are we talking about?
Thank you, Michael, for that fantastic introduction. Yes, we are recreating the group that we accidentally put together way back when we did our top 10. I think it was Parks and Rec, right? We just decided we were doing a Parks and Rec episode, and then Caroline. Oh, it was New Girl. That's right.
Oh, New Girl. You're right. And Caroline was in the other room, and I was like, "You got to get in here."
Well, anyways, that was really fun. I thought that was a great episode, and I know that Caroline has an attachment to this show, as do you. And I thought I would get in trouble if I did this podcast without Allegis, because it's maybe Allegis's favorite show.
It's up there
ever. It's way up there, which is saying something. So the listeners know from the name of the episode, we're going to talk about Schitt's Creek, and it was on my mind because we just talked about it last week with Jerry when we did the top TV families, and we put the roses pretty high. But it got me thinking about the show and how much I loved it, and I thought it was time for us to discuss it. So I know you've seen it all, but when did you guys... I guess you would have finished it relatively recently because the show itself ended not all that long ago, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we heard some rumblings a while ago and saw the still images on Netflix and were like, that looks terrible.
Yeah.
Because it was just Roland. For whatever reason, Roland was the only person in the marketing materials, so we ignored it for a very long time. Then we watched the first, all but the last season in quick succession about, 6 months ago?
Yeah, in the fall, maybe?
Yeah, maybe even a little before
maybe
that.
Last summer.
And then we waited because we wanted to watch a couple other shows. We just finished the last season kind of right when it became available. Yeah. So pretty recently. So I think right around the same time as you guys.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah, we watched it really, really quickly. And
did we say what this was? You did. You just said this was Schitt's Creek, right? Sorry.
Yeah, Schitt's Creek.
Okay.
And although normally when we talk TV shows like this, we do the top 10 minor characters, which I started putting that list together, and this show is so Rose-centric that there really aren't that many minor characters. There aren't that many truly minor characters because the supplementary characters are all so important to the show. To call Twyla a minor character just doesn't make sense. Same with Roland or Jocelyn or even Bob or some of those characters.
I love Bob.
And when you get into the characters that just have weird minor-ish kind of roles, there just aren't that many of them. So it didn't make that much sense to do that list. So we're just going to do the top 10 episodes. It's a short enough show that I think we can do that effectively. And at least for me, when I think about the show, I think of a couple of episodes that affected me greatly from an emotional point of view. And I would like to talk about some of those episodes specifically. And so it's going to be pretty straightforward. Just the top 10 episodes, my favorites. And that's it.
I think that's the right way to do this.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. The show, I think early on, wanted to be Parks and Rec and introduce us to a big, fully fleshed out world. And then I think sort of realized that wasn't the best way for them to do the show. Because early on, when they're introducing you to sort of the townsfolk, you get a lot of those quick intros. And then you kind of expect to just keep getting more, and then it sort of stops, which I thought was really cool. They're like, okay, we met everyone we're gonna meet now, and we're just gonna get really close to them, and I think that was part of the secret sauce that made this show so good.
I also think that if we tried to rank all of the characters, not even just minor ones, I would have such a difficult time because you could ask me on a Wednesday what my favorite characters were, and then ask me on a Thursday like who my favorite characters were, and I'd have totally different answers because it changes all the time. It changed by episode. They're all so lovable. It's so hard to pick.
Yeah. And this is even more of a relationship-oriented show than I think most. Like, even Parks and Rec, where I think we talked about on this, like, the April and Ron team-up is a really adorable team-up, and it's cute to see their relationship develop over time. This show really, like, the meat of this show is the way the different characters have these relationships. And so to say that you love Johnny is great, but, like, you can't love Johnny without saying, like, Johnny and Stevie, Johnny and Moira. You know, like, those relationships drive your enjoyment of each character. So I don't think you can judge any one character in isolation. They're all interconnected.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like, for that reason, I think the best episodes of the show are the ones where, like, those relationships are put on display, and so I think that's what we'll talk about a lot. But really the only metric I used was how much I loved each episode. I tried to pick ones where, like, the storylines were relatively well balanced, but some of these it's just like there's one, or even sometimes it's just a joke. Like, if a joke is really good and it's one that I think about a lot, like, the episode might be on the list. So we'll just get into it. We'll go from there.
I think this is the right way to do it, but you were really wanting to do the minor character one since, like, episode 2 you started thinking of, or season 2, I mean. But I guess that's probably because at that time they seemed minor, and then as the show goes on, they aren't really anymore.
Well, it's exactly like Mike said. It's like, and that was it. Like, after the first season, like 2 maybe, like, that was it. That's everybody. Like, these are the residents of Schitt's Creek, and now here, watch this, and we'll make you love them more than you thought you would. They just tell you up front, you're like, you're going to be new to this town, and it's going to look unappealing at first, and, like, by the end of it, you're going to love it. And, like, you kind of know that is going to happen from the beginning, and then it happens anyways.
Yeah, except I feel like I wasn't expecting much from a show titled Schitt's Creek. Like, it just sounds like it's going to be kind of what Mike was saying. It just looks silly. It doesn't look that good. I feel like it just sounds like it's going to be a bunch of kind of dumb or crude jokes. And it's so much more than that. It's just, I mean, the comedy parts of the show aren't even the best parts, even though it is so funny. The best parts of this show are the ones where, like you said, the relationships really come through and you see how close they grow over the course of it. So I love the title of the show, and I think the concept is so funny, and it goes along with the vibe of the town. But it's really not what you would expect from a show that has a joke basically in its name.
It's a fart joke. Really.
Yeah, right. I mean, really just not what you would expect.
Yeah. One thing that I'm really excited about to talk about on these episodes is that I forget a lot of the specific episodes, but I don't think I've ever seen a show that better balances, I don't know what the right term would be like, but quest episodes or like side quest episodes with sort of central plot episodes. Like, I think a lot of shows do one or the other of those things really well, or do both of them really well, but kind of balance them inconsistently. Scrubs is a show that I think did that really well, where, like, they sort of found the right mix of advancing the plot and also just doing, like, silly adventures. And this show did that just extraordinarily well, in that, like, you never really knew what you were getting until the episode ended, whether this was just an episode where something silly happened and it was a nonsense adventure, or whether this was going to be one of the fundamental episodes of the show, which is so, it's just cool and exciting, and every episode was like a real surprise.
Yeah, I think a good counterpoint like a counter example to kind of illustrate your point is The Mandalorian, where it's like there's 4 episodes that are absolutely plot driven episodes, and there's 4 episodes that are just like kind of do whatever episodes, and you can't break down Schitt's Creek into buckets like that. It's all kind of
totally
one thing. So
it feels just right. Like it always felt just right.
Yeah.
I hope no one has high expectations for me to remember specific episodes based on the fact that my brother is the king of remembering every episode and every line of every show he's ever watched.
Yeah, I should caveat that I didn't do a series rewatch like Ian is liable to do.
Damn it, Kyle. Damn it. I'm excited to take your tour.
All right, so episode 10. I had... this is season 1, episode 6. I remember this distinctly as the first time that I laughed really, really hard at the show. It's the episode is called Wine and Roses, and it's best known as the episode where she does the flute wine commercial for the herb flirtlinger. And she gets really drunk
it's
before doing the commercial.
Herb Erlinger?
Herb Erlinger, something like that. Flirtlinger. You said flute wine. Oh, that is funny. I didn't remember the other aspects of this episode so much. Apparently, David has a panic attack, which I don't remember. I do remember, this is back when Alexis and Mutt are a thing, and they go to a yoga class with Roland and Jocelyn, I believe, which is nice and awkward. And I think they drag David along with them.
I think there's a part in that scene where the instructor says to, like, touch the back of your legs, and Alexis thinks you're supposed to touch your partner, so she touches the back of Mutt's legs or something like that. Right. That happens, I'm pretty sure.
It's also when David thought he was having a heart attack or something, so he went to the vet to get it checked out.
Yes!
They took him to the closest doctor's office, which was the veterinarian's office.
Is that how they meet Ted?
Enter Ted? Yeah, maybe.
I think that might be how they meet Ted.
I think it might be, yeah.
I'm very glad that they got rid of Mutt. Like, he was fine and all, but he was a distraction. He was, you know who he was? He was the Mark Brandanowitz.
Right.
Yes, he was.
He probably lasted about as long as Mark Brandanowitz, too.
Yeah.
Who else was?
I said he probably lasted about as long on this show as Mark did on Parks and Rec.
Mark Brandanowitz.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just remember this is like, I knew Catherine O'Hara was funny, but I didn't really, like, I knew her mostly from Home Alone, and then, like, to make me laugh that hard, and it's also, she's locked herself in her trailer, and Johnny asks her to open the door, and it opens immediately, and she's sitting, like, all the way across the trailer, and she's like, how did you do that? It's like, I threw a shoe. It's like, it's not that funny, but, like, her line reading of it, and the whole commercial was when I really realized that, like, oh, shit, like, Catherine O'Hara is amazing, and I can't wait for...
I suspect it wasn't just you, though. Like, I think when we watched, I'm sure you guys did, too, when it ended, like, the making of special.
Behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I think that, like when Seinfeld got Michael Richards, like when Parks and Rec got Chris Pratt, like whatever, any number of shows, I think that they knew they had a talent. I don't think they had any idea what they had. And I suspect that this was probably about when they realized that they had somebody who could... Now, they didn't do this, which I think was a credit to them, but like somebody who could paper over some script deficiencies or like get them through an episode where they ran out of budget or whatever. Like just figure something out for Moira, because this was when she showed how funny she was.
It was also great to learn in that behind the scenes special that she was the one, Catherine O'Hara was the one who decided to bring the wigs into her character and who decided to bring the she created that accent and stuff. Yeah, that is just so incredible that wasn't in the script.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Without that, I mean, totally different character. Without the wigs and the voice, I mean,
totally.
That makes it.
That's the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, yep. So that was like Moira's coming out party on Schitt's Creek. Number 9, season 4, episode 6, open mic. This is a real heartwarmer. This is when Patrick sings to David at the apothecary.
I might cry right now.
Oh
thinking
my
about
god.
it.
Me too.
So cute.
Side note, our dear friends Harry and Katrina might use that song as their first dance song at their wedding.
Oh,
Stop.
Like the Patrick recording of it.
Ugh.
that's amazing.
That's a guaranteed tearjerker. The less remembered other storyline of this episode is that it's revealed that they've changed the branding of the motel to Rosebud. And
that was
the
another
shot
tearjerker.
of them all walking inside and Stevie just standing outside and looking up at the new lettering is like arguably just as much of an emotional twang as Patrick. So to have those both in one episode, and this was late enough in the series that like we were fully invested and didn't need to be convinced anymore. But man,
I'm sorry, you were just saying about like the Stevie moment. I think it represents something cool about this show, which is that it doesn't prize romantic love over other kinds of love, which I think is a mistake that a lot of TV shows especially make, which is like, okay, character X, Y, or Z is stale. How do we advance their storyline? Oh, get them a romantic interest. Okay, that can validate this thing about them. And it can end up happening to the exclusion of people who decide to be alone, people who have close relationships with family or friends or whatever, and it kind of de-emphasizes those other types of relationships. And I think it was really cool because this is a show that really leans into the other types of ties and not just romantic ties. And I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but like the ending really does a great job with that. That different people have different stories, and showing like Stevie's embrace into the family and specifically her friendship with Johnny in the same episode when you show Patrick and David is really cool. And I think shows two of the real strengths of the show.
1000%. I love that episode. That brings us to number 8. Number 8 is season 6, episode 5, The Premiere. This is another one where there's 3 great storylines here. So the first, the title of the episode is The Crows Have Eyes premiere. So so that's just the funniest. Like, it's just so funny with the actual crows and Alexis and the red carpet. Like, that's just funny.
It's just like Batman Begins.
Right.
When he throws the little radar thing.
But the subplots on this episode are Patrick gets his wisdom teeth removed, and then he's all drugged up back at their apartment and says some things to David about how great of a dad he will be.
Oh, yeah.
Which was like,
cute.
Oh, adorable.
Yeah, and this is the same episode where Stevie and Johnny have been kind of like dancing around each other for the last couple episodes about the motel business because she thinks that she wants to try something else, and she realizes
she tries to become a flight attendant at that terrible
Right.
airline. What's it called? It's something stupid.
Steve Air, or not Steve Air.
Yeah,
it's a
it's
guy's
something
name.
like that.
Like, it's supposed to be, I think, like Ryan Air, but it's like
Yeah,
Jerry
it's
Air.
like Chuck Air or something. Yeah.
But so this is the episode where Stevie finally talks to Johnny and says, like, I want to be back in, like, I want to be a part of this. Which it's late in the show, so it makes sense that they're kind of tying that back together. But
Is this the same episode where she reads the book written by Johnny Rose that he gives her?
I forgot about
And
that.
that's part of the reason she comes back to the hotel.
yeah, and like the look, this is just such
Oh, it's
great.
Larry Air. I just looked it up.
What is it?
Larry
Air.
Oh, it's so perfect.
Oh, the look on Johnny's face when like he realizes that she actually read it and is gonna quote something from it to him is like obviously Johnny and Alexis have like a great father-daughter relationship, but like arguably a relationship I like more is Johnny and Stevie. Like, we don't know anything about Stevie's parents, and so like the fact that Johnny can fill that role for her is a pleasure to see develop.
Well, it's cool because they have more of an equal relationship than he and Alexis do. Like, I think he has a very like paternal, protective relationship with Alexis, which is very cute in its own right. But it's cool that he's very invested in letting Stevie blossom on her own and kind of helping her where he can. And it makes for a really kind of cool co-equal relationship with the motel.
Faux show. This is the part normally where we would do a not top 3. I even looked for some. It's not like I was just like, I'll just skip this. I looked and I couldn't remember any like episodes that I really didn't enjoy. There's the
I don't think there's a stinker on this show. Like, I remember waiting. Like, every episode, I was just waiting for them to, like, cough up a furball, and they didn't.
the only one I remember in the moment, like, being ready for one plot to be over was the one where Johnny and Moira are going to the spa or something, and they hit a cat, and then they end up being, like, in those people's house. And, like, they, like, make them apologize to the daughter, and then they end up giving the spa day to the daughter. And it was, like, it was all funny. It was so good that it, like, really made me uncomfortable. And that's what...
But that's also, like, a more sitcom-y plotline than they would typically do. Like, that's one of the things that the show did really well, was it avoided sort of, like, generic sitcom-y episodes. Like, different shows handle that differently. Like, New Girl's brilliance is that every episode was a sitcom setup, and it just did it super well. Like, I think that Schitt's Creek was really successful because even when it felt like it was gonna sitcom you, it didn't really. And this was one that it maybe a little bit did.
That's all I can think of.
I think the weakest episodes of this show are the very beginning of the series, which isn't even really a fair criticism because that's true of most shows. But I do remember thinking that I went back and rewatched the very first episode with my family a while back because they hadn't seen it. And I remember thinking that it just wasn't quite as funny. Like, I was almost convincing them, like, don't worry, it gets way funnier. But I don't even really think those count as bad, though. I just think it hadn't quite found its groove yet, and then it so quickly does and becomes amazing. But the first handful of episodes are not the strongest. I think probably the one we have at number 10, that's episode 6, I think that's probably the first really good one.
Yeah.
That sounds right to me, too. Like, 6 is right around, I think, when it starts to hit its stride.
Yeah, that was it for me anyways. So, we can move on to number 7.
Thanks, Kevin.
Sorry,
I don't know
Kevin.
if you played the
Sorry,
music
Kevin.
or not, but probably not.
Okay, number 7, season 5, episode 8 is called The Hospies. It's not quite as good as the Dundies, but this is the one where Johnny and I think Roland comes. I think it's just supposed to be Johnny and Stevie. They go to some convention, like a hospitality convention, and Stevie meets that guy that reviews like motels and hotels and stuff, and they've got like kind of
who was on a show that my dad loves called Red Fern or Red Oaks, and he plays the tennis pro who sleeps with all of the married women and is hysterical. And it was funny seeing him play such a toned down version. Shouts to you, Jerry. I know how much you love that character whose name is eluding me right now.
That guy was good, but they win an award for like best. Like, it's some, like, ridiculous award. Best...
Like, turn down service or, like, a Sheets or something.
Yeah, but Johnny's, like, so proud of it. But more important... And that's a great plot line. But more importantly, this is the episode where Moira and Jocelyn are struggling to find a lead actress for Cabaret, and so they must finally resort to letting Alexis audition.
That's the same episode?
Yes.
Wow. What a strong one.
Incredible.
A little bit Alexis.
Yeah. La, 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 la.
Have you guys seen the trend on, I think it's on TikTok?
Caroline has.
Well, I don't have a TikTok, but I watch all of the reposts of them, like, on Instagram, so close enough. But where people will play that audio clip and then do the Alexis dance, it's very funny.
Oh,
and
no.
I've
never seen that.
Some of them wear an outfit that looks like what she was wearing in the episode. Some of them are really good. That's very funny. Highly recommend.
That's incredible. I also really I remember like when the whole COVID thing first came out and there were memes made about it, like the hand washing one. It was like how to properly wash your hands and sing, I think it's Happy Birthday, the one they usually sing, but they like dubbed it so it's like a little bit Alexis, and it's like 20 seconds of the song that will take to wash your hands. That was a good one.
It's so good.
Yeah. At least for me, like, I feel like that actress, and I don't know her name, like, she's really, really good at being Alexis, but for the most part, I think that they kind of don't ask her to do too much, like, in the way of physical comedy. Like, the way she talks to David is really funny, and her emotional range is really put on display like late in the show. But like as far as like your conventional kind of like outwardly funny skills, I think this is like one of the few really good examples of her flexing. And I get this. I suspect that a lot of this was kind of like improv by her. Like I doubt that they had like the dance kind of choreographed beforehand. So I just thought that was a really good performance by her. And it's like probably one of the defining moments of the show.
So funny.
Yeah. Also just love the whole like behind the plot behind that is that she had her own sitcom with Paris Hilton or something. I don't remember the extent of it.
Yeah, it's like I will be playing the
like,
title track from
Yes. Yes. Oh, so good.
I'm a little bit single, even when I'm not.
Well, and it's funny that she ends up being so bad. Like, I guess you kind of see it coming because Moira is so hesitant, but you also are kind of led to believe that Moira is hesitant because she's jealous and that Alexis is going to be really good, and then she's so bad, and it's just...
I was more in the Moira is jealous camp, and I was very surprised and very pleasantly surprised that she was bad.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, also, like, Moira's not like a super reliable narrator, to borrow a literature term.
No.
Like, she's not like the best judge of stuff anyways, so that was...
Although, to be fair, talking literature, Moira, if you read between the lines and pay attention, is exceptionally well read.
Yes, that's true.
Like, Moira's down with, like, Tolstoy. She is reading the masters.
She also has a lot of really great movie references, like, and not necessarily good movies. Like, she references a lot of B movies, usually in, like, derogatory fashion when talking about somebody else, but that was number 7. Number 6, we have the very next episode, which they really changed pace or changed gears quickly. The episode is called The MVP, and it's the episode where David is enlisted to play. David and Johnny both are enlisted to play in the town softball game, which...
Amazing. That's one of my favorite episodes.
That's pretty much it. Like, it's just the softball game, but it's like kind of an event episode. Like, it's a big deal.
It's their sponsor is the Cafe Tropical, right?
Yes. They have those. I need to get a pair of those in sleeves. They're so cool.
Was there an opposing team that also has a business?
I think it was Bob's Garage.
Is it Bob's Garage? I'm sure it is.
I think it was Bob's, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Also, is that the episode where we're introduced to his amazing white sunglasses?
Probably.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
I feel like that was a defining prop of David's in the show. And when I just pulled it up, when I'm picturing him in his softball uniform, I don't know if you guys can see this, but he's wearing the white sunglasses.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, they're so good. With the Cafe Tropical t-shirt, yeah.
Oh, and he's making that face, like, he's just sort of, like, grimacing a little bit.
You need to see it. Oh, man.
Yeah, I was so excited to see him in a stupid softball uniform because I am a person who wears a stupid softball uniform. And it's so stupid to be a grown-ass person wearing baseball pants. And you know David would disdain anybody who would wear those pants so much. And the visual just didn't disappoint whatsoever. And like Johnny's bragging about how good he was and
I think David throwing a baseball in that uniform is my favorite physical bit he does, except for the episode where Mutt buys Alexis a bike and then David tries to ride it and he's like wobbling like
he's wobbling so hard.
So good.
So those two are the best.
I thought you were going to say something else that I'm pretty confident is higher up on the list.
Okay.
So we'll get there.
Yeah, this is an episode that has like kind of a classic sitcom-y feel to it. Pit like one group of our friends against another and some good-natured fun. David is the hero at the end. Doesn't he get like a walk-off hit? Like it's what you expect from the softball episode, but wow.
Isn't this also where you learn that Ronnie hates Patrick for no reason?
No, she hates him for There's a good reason.
Oh, is there?
He keeps getting, she's supposed to like redo the floor in the apothecary or his apartment. And he's like, hey, Ronnie, when are you gonna get those floors done?
Yes.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
She's like, oh, I'll get right back
You're
to
right.
it as soon as I'm done like haggling with my supplier or whatever to save you some money. And then like after that, it's just over for Patrick.
Yeah.
But it definitely carries over into this episode.
Yeah, but the rivalry is a big part of this episode, which I enjoy. And anytime we can get Ronnie, I'm in.
Oh, yeah.
AKA Pepe. Do you guys know that meme of the frog named Pepe? He's like a...
Oh, is it because of her eyes?
Yes, it's the eyes.
She has some crazy eyes. They sort of looks like my dad's aunt, who was misdiagnosed with lupus for like 50 years, and it turns out because lupus causes those buggy eyes, but it turns out she just had some weird calcified growth behind her eye.
Whoa.
Oh.
Got it removed at like the age of 80. Not
Wow.
lupus. Number 5.
It's all good. Number 5. All right, now we're getting into some all-time
This is the one I
greats.
was talking about. Okay. Sorry, I can see Kyle's screen. Go ahead.
Season 2. So season 1 ends with everyone thinking that they're leaving Schitt's Creek. They think they're going to sell the town.
Yeah.
The deal falls through, which means that Alexis now is actually engaged to Ted, and she's just cheated on him. But David is really distressed because he thought that Stevie would move to New York with them, and she doesn't. And he realizes he has nobody back home to move in with him. So he just runs away. And it's in season 2, episode 1, Finding David, that they do in fact find David.
I thought when you were talking about physical comedy, you were going to say when he's crouched in the field holding, like, what does he have, like a pitchfork or something? And he's got those sunglasses on, I think. Or so, yeah. Oh, now I got to pull up a photo.
That's one of my favorite early storylines because I think that the characters take a long time and they each kind of go in their own time. They take a while to question whether the life that they used to live and the life they're always pining for was really kind of worth it. And I think David probably gets there first. And I think it's this particular interaction that starts to kind of send him on that journey. And it's just, it's pretty magical that the show convincingly takes you from the place he is at the beginning to the place where, you know, he wants to settle down in Schitt's Creek at the end of the show. Like, I really believed that arc, and I think this early sort of sprinkling of why was really well done.
Absolutely. And we just pulled the picture up on
Yeah,
our
sorry,
phone.
I'm
It's worth a
distracting
Google.
everyone.
He's wearing all black.
Oh my god, yes.
I think he might even have fur on the top of his
Does he
hood,
have-
which I never noticed.
Isn't one of the things that he has Moira's handbag, and like that's why she wants to find him so badly?
Yeah, her handbag
yes,
is lost.
I'm almost certain. Oh my god,
so
this show.
incredible.
I think they talked about this in the like after the final season special, but like whoever was doing wardrobe for this show is a genius because for David and Moira, like the wardrobe is such an important part of their character. And like we always would joke, like every episode David shows up with a different black, like ridiculous shirt.
Oh.
Like how much fun must it have been to see something and know like that is going to be something David wears next season or whatever.
And it sure looked like Dan Levy was either
huge
in
part of
charge of
that,
that
yeah.
or just a huge part of that.
That
Yeah.
I loved how they touched on that in the behind the scenes special because I noticed that throughout the whole, series. So I'm really glad that they brought attention to that and was like, yeah, every single outfit that every single character wore was a very conscious decision. And I just really like that kind of attention to detail when it comes to that stuff.
It was also just a really smart way of making the show visually distinctive because I think we've all gotten really used to the look and feel of sort of the single camera, like confessional office, Parks and Rec, Brooklyn Nine-Nine type show. And then obviously there's the outdated sort of multi-camera, or whatever. I might be getting my multi-single backwards, but you know what I'm talking about. Like the moving camera of like Full House type deal. And that obviously just looks super dated. And so you're kind of like, what is the way to make this look fresh and be clear that you're not Parks and Rec and you're not The Office? And where they did use, which I didn't realize, like from seeing the behind the scenes, they use a lot of sets and not like location shooting. using the costumes was really smart because there's just not a big canvas to sort of paint with.
Right. Yeah, like that's the other thing is there's not that many characters. There's not that many places in Schitt's Creek. Like there's the apothecary and the motel and the cafe. And
Blouse
like
barn.
the blouse barn.
Yeah, the blouse barn.
Mutt's barn. Like there's not that many places in Schitt's Creek. So you're right. I think you're totally right.
They're not really
Mike.
outside that often either.
No.
And it's always fun when they do, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like it feels like an adventure. It was like that on Seinfeld, too. Like, whenever they went outside of the apartments or Monk's or one of their offices, they were like, this is an adventure episode. It's the same on The Office. Like, when they left The Office, it was a very special episode.
Yep. For sure.
Yeah.
That brings us to number 4. Number 4 is the season 2 finale. I was surprised to find this episode as low as it was because at the time I was very aggressively moved by it. So this is the episode where Moira and Johnny bump into some old acquaintances and they go to dinner after they've canceled with Roland and Jocelyn, and then they end up eating with them, and they end up defending Schitt's Creek in front of these like acquaintances that just like left them for dead, basically. So that scene where like I think he says something like, "The town you pass through is called Schitt's Creek, and it's where we live." And like these are our friends, beautiful. And like that would have been enough to drop the mic there. But then, and I wonder if they just didn't know if they were going to do another season because like really the show could have ended when they go back to Mutt's barn and there's that really beautiful like party going on with the Christmas lights up and Moira and Johnny and Alexis and David are all just kind of dancing together as a family, and like they really, with the camera work, like make a point of like these 4 people are together and like enjoying each other's company in a way that they were not doing before they lived here. Which we always joke, like any episode that like makes us kind of cry, like tear up a little bit, we're like, oh, what is this? The season finale? And it was, but I think that was the first time that because season 1, like the end of season 1 is emotional, but this was the first time where I felt like deeply moved by Schitt's Creek.
I couldn't agree more. I love that episode.
This is the first time that they really show that they're connected to Schitt's Creek, I think. Like, you can see that they have started to like it, but I think this is the first time that they really admit it. Don't you think?
Yeah, they defend it and in front of these people that they, know somewhat well, I guess. But
and to each other too. Like I think that you get the sense early on that they're a family, but I think this was the first time where they sort of really declare we're in this together. And I think that those two things, I mean, it's not a great leap to say that those things are connected, that their feelings toward Schitt's Creek and their feelings toward each other are closely connected. But like in saying we like Schitt's Creek and Schitt's Creek matters to us, they're saying we like each other and we, are connected to each other because that's why they like Schitt's Creek, because it represents them sort of turning back the clock on all these years they've missed with each other. And I think it's really cool because I was definitely worried, and as it turns out, wrongly, I was worried early on that these characters were going to turn out to be kind of pods who didn't really have the deep relationship with each other, or that the show wouldn't respect their relationships to each other enough to like treat them seriously. And I think this was a relatively early indication that they were treating these relationships really seriously.
Amen. So I have a few honorables. Like every episode of this show is great, but I just picked a couple that like just missed my list. I think the pilot is, I know the pilot like in retrospect is maybe not as funny like without like the relationships you form later on, but I think that I like the scene where they're in their house, like being tossed out of their house. Like I think that's a cool scene.
Yeah.
I think it's a good introduction to the show. So I remember really liking that.
I wouldn't have talked about it in the not top if I knew you had it up here.
It also definitely sets up the visual contrast to the rest of the show. Like I remember specifically wondering whether the mansion was going to come back or like be a part of the show. And I know that they did a couple of flashbacks to the mansion, but it was a real visual statement. Like, here is this place. We're not going back. And I remember being kind of struck and impressed by the fact that that was our only lengthy interaction with the house, except for a couple flashbacks.
It's also really interesting to me. I don't really know exactly how the TV industry works, but I do know that you create a pilot and then, people are like, oh, I like this pilot. Let's, shoot more episodes. So it's so funny to me that someone watched that ridiculous premise of a show and said, yeah, this will work, and just trusted it. And,
part of why it's so cool, I think, is the magic of having Eugene and Dan Levy on this, because having Eugene Levy, who is a comedy legend, is really helpful to kind of giving you some air cover. Because even though, of course, it is his son, I think being associated with him, it buys you a little time. In the same way that I think for Parks and Rec, having the affiliation with Greg Daniels and then obviously Amy Poehler, it just buys you a little time to work out the kinks in a way that a lot of shows don't ever get the opportunity to work out the kinks.
Yeah, there's some cachet that gives you a runway.
Yeah.
I also had season 5, episode 13. That's not the season finale, but it's the episode where Patrick proposes on their hike. It's a nice moment.
Oh,
So
that
nice.
was cute.
so good.
I have season 2, episod 2, Family Dinner, just because that's the episode with folded cheese in it.
That one's not on the top 10. I am
Folded
shocked.
cheese!
What were they making, empanadas or
Yeah.
what were they making? It's
What are
like
they
like
making?
a really
Case enchiladas?
Yeah, it might be enchiladas.
Something
Yeah, I
Mexican.
think it is.
It slid from my list because it pretty much runs on the strength of one joke, but then again, it is like one of the greatest jokes of the show.
I feel like this show, among many other things, used cursing really brilliantly in that it didn't overuse the word fuck, but when it did, it was really effective. And I'm now kind of forgetting whether they used it, but I feel like I can picture David being like, what the fuck does fold the cheese mean?
It's really good work from Catherine O'Hara, but doing someone that, like, it's the whole, like, I know what the answer is, why don't you tell me what it is? Like, you just fold it in. I don't know how else to explain it, David. Like, that's...
What do you got, Linus?
it is enchiladas, and the way she says it is like, oh, enchiladas.
My famous enchiladas.
My mother's recipe.
Yeah, right.
That's like did I ever tell you my grandmother made a claim somewhat recently that she made mincemeat pie for us, which is, I think, just like a sweet pie, which doesn't sound like the name. Whatever. That she made it for us every Christmas. And she said this, like, at a family gathering, and every single one of us was like, huh? And now we normally let, like, some of her more outrageous statements go, but I remember we were all like, Mom, you've never made that for any of us. And then, like, after a little bit of reflection, she made it one time, like, 30 years ago. And I feel like if the family got together on this topic, Moira probably had their maid make enchiladas one time 20 years ago, and it suddenly turns into, like, her famous enchilada recipe.
Right. Well, but, Moira's not really prone to exaggeration, so who knows?
No. Good point.
I do think this episode brings up the funny point of them eating literally every meal at the cafe. Because I think we had been like, do they just always eat at the cafe? Like, do they go anywhere else? And then they say that in the episode. They're like, don't you think we should start cooking for ourselves sometimes? Which is pretty funny.
I think if we were ever to do a top 10 fictional restaurants list, which we should,
Ooh.
the Cafe
Yes, we should.
Tropical
I like
is...
that one.
like that.
The Griffin.
Yeah, the Cafe Tropical is, like, definitely top 3. The fucking enormous menus are the greatest props of that entire show.
So good.
Anyways, so those are my honorables. We'll go back after I do my top 3 and we can round those out. Number 3. These are some good episodes up here. I had the show's overall finale, season 6, episode 14, happy ending. I remember at the time feeling very sad because I was not ready for the show to be over.
I'm still not ready.
And I remember feeling, very weird mix of emotions because I knew that the ending was, like, perfect and actually correct and, like, the way that these things go and bittersweet in all the right ways. But I think I had, like, tricked myself into believing that I actually wanted them all to stay in Schitt's Creek. And
Which
like,
you didn't.
I didn't, but I really thought that I did. And so like at the time I remember being like really not disappointed, but like very, very sad on a couple of fronts. And like for a show to be able to accomplish that is really special. And then it's a beautiful episode. Like David and Patrick get married, and for those reasons I had that at number 3.
Not because of the crown that Moira wears while she officiates
garb.
the ceremony.
Incredible.
The Pope
So
hat.
That doesn't hurt.
Or the fact that Alexis wears a wedding dress.
Yeah, that's true. Well, actually, and I just remembered the reason that the episode is called Happy Ending is because of the massage.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, that's amazing. We had a very interesting experience watching the last season because I think we bought it on Amazon Prime or something, and it included that last like behind the scenes episode. Mm-hmm. So technically, that if there was 10 episodes in the last season, that was episode 10. So when we were watching the finale, we thought it was episode 9. We still had one left. Which was extremely confusing.
Yeah, but like with 5 or 10 minutes left, we're like, this
this
feels like a
is it.
finale.
Oh, so you weren't even mentally prepared. That's terrible.
No.
Jarring.
Yeah.
But then when we saw I remember when we saw the Schitt's Creek sign. Well, first of all, we knew it was gonna fix the sign. Like we were like, okay, the sign's gonna get fixed. But when we saw the sign, we're like, oh, this is it. Like this is absolutely the last episode.
Yeah, because when they packed up and moved, we were like, what else could happen? Like,
and we were kind of
over.
Like, oh no, I hope nothing else happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
It's pretty extraordinary. Like, some shows go out on top. Like, we were talking recently about Fleabag and how it was so... we're so glad that they decided to end Fleabag when they did.
No spoilers, but...
No spoilers. But it was 2 seasons.
Right.
And, like, as remarkable of a run as that show had, and as remarkable as it is that I'm both sad and happy that it ended what it did, that was 2 seasons. Schitt's Creek did 6, and it still felt like it went out exactly on top.
That was a big focus of that bonus episode, was like the decision to end this show right when it was achieving a critical mass, which is so hard to do. But I'm hopeful that they can turn that momentum into... I just can't wait to see what like Dan Levy does next. Like, what is his career going to be like? Because
I think he probably I think he has a career behind the camera. I don't think he will have a career in front of the camera really beyond this, because I think he's too closely identified with the character, both in terms of like his popularity, but also in terms of actually, I think, being somewhat similar to that character. It's a little bit of a Larry David situation where he's playing like an exaggerated version of himself. But I think his sensitivity and humor and ability to like weave those things together means he can do anything.
I imagine you're right. I think he'll probably... I imagine him just writing, because he wrote a really large portion of this show.
Oh, he did?
Oh, yeah. I'd be curious to see what he writes next, and I eagerly anticipate it. So, episode 2. This is my personal favorite episode, even though I have it ranked at number 2, just because I think it's less important to the overall structure of the show, is the season 4 finale, Merry Christmas, Johnny Rose. So, Mike, you were saying earlier there's a couple of flashback episodes, and I think this episode has its funny moments, like when Moira and David do their performance up on stage, their annual performance, but like the way that they flash back and forth between like what a Christmas party at the Rose Mansion was like compared to like Johnny so desperately wanting to have a party at the motel, and like understanding why it's important to him. And I think most importantly, like you hear like they mostly use it for jokes, like when they talk about what their life was like, where Alexis will say like, oh, well, when I was in Armenia at that concert or whatever, or like when David says, well, when I was, here with these people, this celebrity, or, whatever, they're mostly calling back to their previous life, mostly like as a form of comedy. And it alludes to the way that they interacted or how they didn't interact back then. But you see it only this, like, in focus in this episode. And, like, the sadness, there's a scene where, like, everyone's left And it's this huge house with nobody in it. David's already upstairs. Alexis is away with friends. And Johnny says something like, would have been nice if we had all been together for one moment, tonight. And Moira really can't be bothered. And he's just like this lone guy in his house, this huge house with nobody in it. And it's like such a sad moment that frames everything else that's happening on the other side of the episode in the motel. And I think like it's a really expertly put together episode. And I don't know, it's my favorite episode. I love it.
Fundamentally, it's a Christmas Carol. it's the Christmas Carol story, and it's just, like you said, expertly done. And it's sort of like, I don't know if the Rosebud thing is like a joke, but I'm not going to pretend I've seen Citizen Kane, maybe someday, but I'm familiar with the term. Like, Rosebud is the concept that there's something that explains why somebody is the way that they are. And I think this is the Rosebud episode for Johnny Rose. Like, this is where you see why Christmas matters to him so much and why he is trying to cling so hard both to his family in one direction and his prior success in another direction. And I think it's cool to see that push and pull, because I don't think the show ever scoffs at either. Like, I think that's a cool thing too about the show, is like, it doesn't make them out, obviously, other than for jokes, it doesn't make them out to be like shallow assholes who just want to get away and be successful. It's like, there was something really alluring about the life that they lived, and it's not stupid that they want to get back to it.
No, yeah. That analogy is more apt than you realize, because like the Rosebud thing is supposed to show that like this guy that was a multimillionaire, had this empire. Like, what really matters to him is his childhood and like the family that he used to have and no longer does. It's kind of like a reverse scenario with Johnny. But yeah, I think that's a great episode. And the best episode, I think this probably doesn't come as a surprise to anybody. I had number 1, Life is a Cabaret. That's the season 5 finale.
I'm not a big show rewatcher. This is the only episode I have gone back and watched a second time because I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I just had to watch it again. I intend, I think, to watch this whole series again because I just loved it so much, but that one was the one that I like had to see again immediately.
Absolutely. I remember when that episode ended, I think we just like sat on the couch and looked at each other like, wow. Like, I always knew that it was such a great show, but I think that episode, it really made me realize like how special this show is. And like, I'm gonna think about this show like years into the future,
What I like about it is that like a lot of these episodes, like they focus on a specific character and like make them shine, or a couple of characters, and like really everybody is at their best in this episode. Like Moira and Jocelyn pull together this amazing show, and like actually the logistics like of them learning the dance numbers, like the show itself is incredible. Stevie and Patrick are performing on stage, like David and Johnny, like they're all in the audience watching and like supporting their friends and family.
Moira gives Stevie that amazing pep talk.
Oh my god.
Right before Stevie goes out and totally crushes it.
There's no like there is the subplot of like also everyone has found out that Patrick and David are engaged, and like David is being a little like petty in that he wants to make the announcement himself at the cast party and everything, but like for the most part this episode is just a celebration of like what these people have accomplished and like the family, like nuclear and extended, that they've created. And it's just a beautiful show, and it's like it's never better encapsulated than in this episode.
Totally I would have loved to see what all of the actors' reaction was when Dan Levy was like, so we're going to throw a musical into the show, and you're going to have to sing and dance and wear cabaret costumes. Like, what? It's just crazy that they just, like, went with it and trusted him and just did it big.
Yeah, another thing I was not expecting to see from this show, a musical.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I think one of the things that's really cool about the show, and it kind of goes on the other side of the, like, not saying that they were total jerks before, is that the show just, and this is no profound insight, but the show just really celebrates the kind of little joys of life. And I think it's really cool that the show, like, in a small town, like, the birth of Roland and Jocelyn's kid is a big deal. Like, Bob getting divorced is a big deal. Having a show that, like, takes over the town is a big deal. Having the premiere of The Crows Have Eyes is a big deal. Like, it really leans into how big these things are for these people, and it doesn't make fun of it, which I think is so cool and so ballsy, because it's so easy. It's just so easy to make fun of people getting excited about stuff, and I just think that's, like, really cheap, easy comedy, and the show just doesn't take that opportunity. Like, you could so easily make fun of all the characters for investing as much into this show as they do in Cabaret, and it doesn't. It, like, genuinely celebrates it, and we're supposed to be and are really excited that, like, Stevie's as great as she is. Like, that's cool. I like that. That's kind, and that's takes a lot more guts to do than to make fun of her.
Yeah, I was surprised that, or I think it showed growth in David's character, that he wasn't the one to make fun of them. Because I think, like, how embarrassed he gets in the other episode we talked about when Patrick does the open mic and he just thinks it's, like, dorky and doesn't want any part of it. Like, he really wants to go see them in this show. He's, like, totally bought in by this point, I think. Also, This is the episode where Ted leaves, and at the end, Alexis says Ted has to Galapagos.
Oh, yeah.
Which is not the most important part of the episode, but
Important nonetheless.
still notable.
No, that's important.
What is Alexis's plot line in this episode? I kind of forget.
She's also in the show.
She's in
That's
the
actually
show.
part of the plot line, is that, like, Moira forgets she's in it. She's like, well, what are you doing tonight? She's like, I'm in the show!
Oh, yeah.
But I don't remember what else. Probably saying goodbye to Ted. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, so that was my list. What other episodes do you guys want to talk about?
I would maybe add the
wow.
one where Patrick comes out to his parents.
Ooh.
That was going to be that's like
yeah.
the big one that sticks out for me, because I remember they did, I think it was maybe Glad. Somebody did, like, they did a message on, like, helping young people who are trying to come out to their families. Mm-hmm. And I remember that was like that felt like something. That episode felt really important.
It's interesting because that's, like, the only episode where, like, the fact that Patrick and David are gay together is, like, really a plot line. Like, they talk about this in the after episode, but, like, what's so unique about Schitt's Creek is that it's not an event or abnormal that a major character is gay. Like, it just is. Like, this is what a gay relationship can and should be like. And I feel like this is the kind of one episode where they deviated from that in a really meaningful way, but meaningful nonetheless.
Yeah, and I think it was really, it was important and smart that the focus of, like, the difficulty for Patrick coming out was his parents. Because I think the show would have been less interesting if it had been about, like, social pressure or his own feelings. Like, at that point, he's pretty comfortable with who he is, and he's not concerned about, like, the town. It's just, he has a specific relationship with his parents, and he's worried about it changing it. And I think, you know, that's not been something I've had to go through, but I would imagine for me, that would be the most difficult and scary part of that. And I think the show was smart to focus on that.
A heartwarming part of this episode also is how supportive Johnny and Moira are of David, which you see throughout the show. But yeah, it's just another example of them being kind and accepting and good parents. But yeah, I think he makes some comment to Patrick's parents, but it's before Patrick's parents know. Remember, that's, like, the funny part of the episode, is that they assume Patrick's parents know, and then they don't. So then they have to dance around it until Patrick finally gets a chance to talk to them himself, but they're all super supportive and, like, really excited for the conversation to happen. So it's also just heartwarming in that regard, too.
Yep. What else you got, Linus?
So I don't remember anything else that happened in this episode, and I don't know what episode number or from what season it is, but
All right.
Alexis's graduation night, when
Oh, yes.
she's like so nervous to graduate and just kind of feeling sad that her family doesn't really care, and she gets to graduation, and Moira and the Jazzy Gals are singing on stage. That was a really heartwarming moment.
That might be the season 3
I think
finale.
it is. I was looking these up before this. I think that is also a season finale,
That's a nice moment.
which is not surprising because it's a
Yeah.
tearjerker.
Yeah, they really pull out the tearjerkers for the finales, huh?
Yeah, they don't fuck around. Each finale might be your last. I feel like this show kind of went like season to season, and so they were like, well, if this is it,
Yeah.
we're gonna.
What else?
I don't know. For me at least, that's a show that kind of runs together.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
the joy of it all just runs together, and I think that's part of what I love about it.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
I don't have any to offer. The only one that I wanted to make sure we mentioned was the one that Ali just mentioned.
Yeah.
Another one that I don't know if this would really count for this list, but for some reason it keeps coming back into my mind is when Alexis is sad from, I think that she and Ted broke up, and she gets really into the soap opera that Moira used to be in. And they
Yes.
all become like obsessed with watching the soap opera, and then she gets on all the message boards, and then that's how she finds out that Moira got screwed over, and that's why she didn't get asked to come back. So it takes kind of a nice turn where it starts off as just like this funny bit about Alexis like binge watching a TV show and falling way down the rabbit hole because she doesn't have anything else to do. But then it ends with her helping Moira get a better TV deal.
What's that show
And she dates
called?
that old guy, remember?
Sunrise.
Oh,
Bay?
yeah.
Oh, that guy.
Ugh.
Isn't it Yuri the Trainer? It's that same actor.
Yes, it is Yuri the trainer who trains. That is who it is. Yep. Not even a small pair of poops.
What is that show called? Sunrise Bay or?
That sounds
Yeah.
right.
That does sound right.
Ah, that's great.
Yeah.
Alexis is also just a very good. Ends up being a great like manager for Moira.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
partially through her investigation of her work, but anyways, we're getting not long, but we're getting around our time, around an hour. So, do we want to do some re-ranking here? And no,
I'm comfortable
Yeah.
with exactly what you guys did. I think that you got it just right.
okay. Well, in that case, I will recap the episodes. It was a real pleasure talking about Schitt's Creek with you two today.
Damn right.
You
Thanks
as
for
well.
coming, ladies.
All right, I will recap in its original order. Number 10, we had Wine and Roses and Flute Wine. Number 9, we had Open Mic Night with Patrick and David. Number 8, the premiere of The Crows Have Eyes. Number 7, The Hospies, and better known as the Alexis edition episode. Number 6, The MVP, aka the softball game episode. Number 5, Finding David. Number 4, the season 2 finale, Happy Anniversary. Number 3, the finale of the show overall, Happy Endings. Number 2, my favorite episode, Merry Christmas, Johnny Rose. And number 1, the season 5 finale, Life is a Cabaret. If for some reason
Snaps
you've listened
to
to
that
this
list.
entire episode and you haven't watched Schitt's Creek, I mean, that sucks, but you should go back and watch it.
And if you've watched it, you should go back and watch it again.
Yeah.
For sure. Have you guys watched it
That's
more
what I'm
than
about
once
to do
yet?
right now. What did you say?
Oh, I said, have you guys watched it more than once?
You watched a couple.
I like to have it on as just a background show. I'm not actively sitting down and watching it, but it's some nice voices to have on when I'm doing chores or something.
Nice to revisit
I'll
these
be back
people.
for sure. Yeah.
Definitely. That's a good point, though. Now that I've seen it once, I don't need to be glued to it, but even just to have the
Right.
dialogue on in the background.
I feel like I'd like to institute a tradition of watching the Merry Christmas episode at least once a Christmas season.
Oh, that's nice.
Oh, that's
I
a
can
great
get on board
idea.
with that.
I think that would really put
I
me
think
in
I
the
could probably
spirit.
do that. Yeah.
I love that.
I'm
That's
down.
like for the friends lovers in the group. I know that this podcast aren't big fans, but there's the iconic
I like
Thanksgiving
Smelly Cat.
episodes. Okay.
Oh,
all right.
you watch Smelly Cat? The one where she sings about the Smelly Cat again?
No,
That's
they
the
do
only
a
episode of
Thanksgiving
that stupid
episode
show.
every season, and it's like a known thing to watch the Thanksgiving
Is it
episodes
called
on
The
Thanksgiving.
One That Something? Or is that how all the episodes are titled? That's
Yeah,
stupid.
that's the show, Mike.
Yeah, it's dumb.
All
That
right.
show sucks.
Well,
You suck.
while we're things that don't suck. 1, Kevin MacLeod. Thank you, Kevin MacLeod, for our intro music. How about that segue? Thank you for your
Yeah, that was a pretty good segue.
Thanks for the not top 3 music, even though we didn't use it today because it's just too good of a show.
Sorry to you, Eugene and Dan made the show too good for us to play not tops.
Take it up with them.
Yeah.
Also, thank you to my sister Erin and her fantastic artwork, which you have seen if you have seen our podcast work. And if you want to see more of Erin's stuff, of course, it's always available on Instagram at SantDesign.
Yeah, and thank you to our wonderful social media director, Caroline, who is right here. Caroline, do you want to tell the peeps where to find your stuff, our stuff, all that?
Sure thing. So you can find top 10 material at top 10km on Instagram and Facebook, but not Twitter. Twitter sucks. And you can find my stuff at cml.photos on Instagram and Facebook.
Caroline, are you going to post the night photos that you took on your website as well as sending them to me directly?
Yeah, I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, why wouldn't you? What would be keeping you from it? Don't you do lifestyle photos? That counts as lifestyle.
I guess, but the stars aren't paying me to take their pics. I mostly post my
very easily scrub this if those are pictures you don't want to put on your website.
No, I'll put them on my website. We can plug them.
Oh, great.
Yeah, we want to see those. So if you want to send us any B-mails where you tell us we suck, or, you want to say that friend sucks or whatever, top10km@gmail.com, 10 spelled out TEN. And finally, sure you're listening to us on some sort of listening app, but if you're looking for another one, we are on the Apple Podcast app, Stitcher, Spotify, Podbean, pretty much wherever podcasts can be found. So thank you, friends, for joining us. Kyle, that's all I have to say.
That's all there is to say. One more thank you to Allegis and Caroline. Thank you for joining us today. That was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
All right. See you later, amigos.
All right.
Arrivederci. All right. Adios.
Peace.